Welcome to Sleeping Shrine, a place where time no longer hurries, where stone steps are worn smooth by centuries of forgotten footsteps, where the wind speaks in the language of rustling leaves, and even the spirits seem drowsy with memory. Here, the lanterns have gone out, the prayers have faded into the wood, but the stillness remains, and so do the stories. By the end of the first week, it's not the silence that unnerves you. It's the emptiness of your own cabinets. The first few days are strange, but manageable. You live off shelf-stable food. Crackers, peanut butter, canned corn, oats. You ration instinctively, unsure whether this is a blip or a true ending. By day 5, you've begun mapping your hunger around your inventory. You know exactly how many spoonfuls of peanut butter you can stretch out before it becomes your last meal. You begin measuring time in meals, not hours. And that's when the new reality sets in. You don't know how to make food appear. You've never hunted. You've never foraged. Your garden, if you had one, was ornamental. You suddenly regret ignoring that YouTube channel about edible weeds. The idea of finding calories outside the grocery store feels like trying to catch fog in your hands. You break into an abandoned gas station with a few others you've begun loosely cooperating with. The snacks have long been claimed. Someone finds powdered milk and cries. Real tears. The group splits it evenly, each person holding their share like treasure. Someone suggests raiding a house on the edge of the neighborhood. Just to look, they say. You hesitate, but hunger is louder than ethics now. You find a single can of green beans under a sink. Expired 3 years ago, but who's checking? That night, you eat them cold. You don't even heat them over the fire pit you've assembled. They taste like tin and salt and sorrow. Still, there's something. Your dreams that night are full of bread. Hot, soft, rising bread. By the second week, water becomes an issue. You used to drink it from the tap without a thought. But now the tap sputters, then dies. You fill every container you have. Pots, mugs, Tupperware, empty wine bottles. You even fill the bathtub. But water goes fast. A neighbor, a former school teacher, remembers how to make a basic filter with sand, gravel, and charcoal. It doesn't taste great, but it doesn't kill you, which is enough. You walk to a nearby creek and haul back jugs. The walk there is fine. The walk back feels like dragging gravity itself. You're sore in places you didn't know could be sore. You realize how much you took plumbing for granted. Toilets become awkward buckets. Showers turn into cloths dipped in cold water. You miss soap. You miss cold drinks. You miss not thinking about thirst. By the third week, a chicken walks through the neighborhood. It's not a hallucination. It's real, plump, red-combed, trotting like it owns the place. The group stares at it in stunned silence. Someone whispers, "Dinner." Another says, "We should keep it for eggs." No one knows how to catch it, much less what to do once it's caught. It hops a fence and vanishes. That night, arguments bloom over a dwindling can of lentils. You're learning things now. Hard things. Like how hunger isn't just physical, it lives in your thoughts. It sharpens your sense of smell. It makes you dream of chocolate, hamburgers, anything warm and fast and full of fat. You remember watching historical shows where people churned butter, plucked herbs, baked bread in clay ovens. You thought it looked charming. Now, you realize how naive that was. Making food is not charming. It's urgent, exhausting, and endlessly slow. Gathering calories without modern tools is like trying to fill a swimming pool with a spoon. Still, small victories emerge. Someone remembers how to identify dandelions. Edible, nutritious, bitter as sin. You eat them anyway. Someone else catches fish in a drainage pond using a safety pin and string. It's barely bigger than a sardine, but it's real protein. You light fires with flint someone had in a camping box. You learn to tend embers like they're precious animals, never letting them die out, feeding them softly with dry leaves and breath. At night, your group huddles around the fire. No one speaks much. Talking feels expensive, but sometimes someone hums. Sometimes someone tells a story, not about what happened, but about a dream they had or a book they once read. It doesn't feel like home. Not yet. But it feels survivable. You learn to wait. You wait for the fish to bite, for the fire to catch, for rain to refill the barrels, for hunger to quiet, for the sun to rise. You count time by the moon and the ache in your legs. You forget what day it is. The world shrinks to the rhythm of your body. Wake, search, build, eat, sleep. The old life, traffic, texts, deadlines, feels like something you imagined. And then, one morning, you wake up not hungry, just tired, just normal. You realize you're still here, still standing. And maybe, just maybe, that means you're ready to begin. The first fire, the first tool, the first village. The first time you make fire without a lighter, it feels like a miracle. It happens after days of struggle. Your matches are damp. Your lighters are spent. You've tried rubbing sticks together, like some cartoon caveman, but the only result has been blistered palms and quiet frustration. Then, someone in your group, an older man who used to be a maintenance technician, brings out steel wool and a battery. You blink. Really? But he demonstrates, stretches the wool like a nest, touches both ends of the battery to it, and within seconds, a delicate orange glow blossoms. Flame. Real fire. Not just borrowed from a gas stove or flicked from a Zippo. This is born from your own hands. And everyone gathers like moths. No one speaks. It is primal. Holy. The air smells of carbon and hope. That night, you sit closer than usual. The fire crackles softly. Shadows dance on your faces. Someone roasts a foraged root over the flame. It burns on one side and stays raw on the other, but you eat it anyway. The world is still broken, but this is something whole. The days blur, but each one feels monumental. Someone discovers an abandoned house with tools still inside: saws, hammers, screwdrivers, an old hatchet. You carry them home like relics. You spend hours sharpening edges, oiling handles. Tools mean agency. They mean construction, control. You start building things, not for comfort, but for survival. Shelter first. You lash tarps between trees. You drive nails into old doors repurposed as walls. You realize that insulation matters. Even in summer, the nights are cold. One person tries to build a lean-to from branches. It collapses. Another figures out how to pack mud and straw into gaps, sealing out the wind. It works. You name your new dwelling the Patchwork. It leaks, creaks, and sways in the breeze, but it's yours. And it's better than the ruins of your old house, where the mold has crept up the drywall and the fridge smells like chemical death. You move your bedding, a thin sleeping bag, and some folded clothes into the Patchwork. That night, the wind howls, but you're dry. Progress. Then someone suggests making a garden. It sounds ridiculous at first. Gardens take months. You're starving now. But the idea sticks. A young woman named Leah, who used to work in a coffee shop, takes charge. She says her grandmother taught her about compost, companion planting, crop rotation. You follow her lead. You till a patch of land with sticks and tire rims. The soil is hard and stingy. You mix in ashes from the fire pit. You find worms, fat and slow, and cheer like kids at a carnival. Someone finds a packet of seeds in an old glove compartment. Carrots, lettuce, radish. It feels like treasure. You plant them with reverence. Every morning, someone checks the patch, like it's a shrine. Tiny green shoots appear. You celebrate. It's not food yet, but it's the future. You build a water system next. There's an old rain barrel behind an abandoned shed. You patch it with duct tape and hope. You place buckets beneath every drip edge. One person figures out how to build a crude gutter from cut plastic bottles. When it rains, you collect everything. You filter it through sand, charcoal, and fabric. Boil it over the fire. It smells smoky. It tastes better than anything you've ever had. Water becomes ritual. You fetch it, filter it, guard it. You learn to wash clothes in a bucket with ash and scrubbing stones. You hang them on twine strung between trees. It's strange how quickly these rhythms become familiar. The way you check the fire each morning like it's a pet. The way your fingers know which containers are for clean water, which are for gray. The way you start calling the tarp-covered kitchen space the hearth, even though it's barely more than a table and a cutting board. You're building a village, and you don't even realize it yet. Community forms slowly, first out of necessity, then out of habit, and eventually out of choice. At first, your little band was just a cluster of survivors, strangers drawn together by proximity and fear. But now, you're beginning to speak with purpose. You trade tasks. You start remembering each other's stories. Anna, who used to be a dental hygienist, turns out to be amazing at weaving cords from old clothing and plant fibers. Marcus, the retired technician, becomes your go-to for anything mechanical. He makes hinges from scrap metal. He fixes a broken flashlight by cannibalizing batteries from a toy keyboard. You, too, find yourself becoming something else. Not a job title. Not a former version of yourself. Just useful. You're good at making fires last. You're patient. People ask your opinion on things like roof angles and fishing lines. And you realize skill matters now. Not credentials. Not your resume. For the first time in years, you feel needed. The first major disagreement happens over a pot of stew. Food is still scarce. Everyone's contributing roots, fish, wild onions, even a handful of cracked grains found in an abandoned barn. It's not much, but combined, it's dinner. When someone tries to sneak an extra portion, voices rise. Accusations fly. For a moment, you fear violence. But instead, Anna stands up and proposes a system: one cook, one server, one person to oversee fairness. Roles rotate. Everyone agrees, reluctantly. And it works. From then on, tasks become more defined. One team gathers firewood. One tends to the garden. One purifies water. It's still messy, still full of improvisation, but there's a rhythm now. A pulse. You start calling yourselves the Circle. Not officially, just in passing. The Circle needs more kindling. Let's check with the Circle before we move the water barrels. It sounds ancient and new at the same time. You're no longer just surviving. You're organizing. Then comes the first real celebration. It's the evening after your garden gives its first harvest, a dozen stubby radishes and a single, perfect tomato. The yield is laughably small, but it's yours, grown with your hands. Proof that something is working. You build a bigger fire. Someone finds an old harmonica in a drawer. It only plays 5 notes, but no one cares. You share the tomato, one slice at a time. You eat radishes with salt scraped from the bottom of a forgotten shaker. You laugh. Not politely, not nervously, but openly. And someone, maybe it was Leah, maybe it was you, says aloud, "We're going to be okay." No one responds, but no one argues. The stars are sharp and endless above. The air smells of smoke and soil. You feel, for the first time since the silence began, like you belong here. You start recording things. Not digitally, not with a camera. With paper, when you can spare it. Scraps of cardboard. Bits of chalk on flat stones. You mark days, record events, sketch rough maps of your territory. You write down what plants are safe, what fish bite in what weather. You start a new calendar. Not January or March, but week of the first tomato, the moon of bitter rain, third gathering. History begins again. Yours. You're living in a time before time. The old calendar means nothing, but memory still matters. So you write. One morning, a traveler arrives. He's sunburnt, rail-thin, carrying a crude walking stick. He tells you he came from a town over the hills, where others are doing the same, building, planting, surviving. Your village, your little cluster of tarp and twine and garden beds, has been found. He brings news. Some of it is hopeful. Others are forming councils, trading seeds, rebuilding windmills. Some of it is grim. Raids, disease, desperation. But what strikes you most is this: he came looking for others. And now that he's here, he says he'll stay. You give him a cot in the patchwork. Share a bowl of soup. And as the fire crackles, you feel a shift. You're not just surviving the end anymore. You're welcoming the beginning. The things we chose to forget. You don't talk about the internet anymore. Not in any real way. Not about streaming or social media, or the bottomless scrolling that used to fill your evenings. In the early days, it came up constantly, like a wound everyone kept picking at. I wonder what's happening out there. I wish we could check the news. If only I had downloaded that survival app. But now, you avoid it. It feels like a different life. A dream. The kind where everything was fast, bright, loud, and disposable. Instead, you talk about the garden, or fishing, or how to fix the leaking roof without losing the tarp. You talk about the dog who wandered into camp and decided to stay. You talk about how the stars are brighter now, and how the wind sounds different when it moves through trees you actually pay attention to. The past hasn't vanished, but you've stopped chasing it. You bury a phone. It happens without much fanfare. You find it while digging for clay near the edge of the creek, your old smartphone, wrapped in a ruined sweater. You must have stashed it early on, hoping you'd find a way to recharge it. You sit with it for a long time, running your thumb over the blank screen. You remember the weight of it, the way it used to buzz constantly, how your eyes used to ache from the glow, how it knew everything, your appointments, your music, your photos, your dreams. Now it's just plastic, glass, metal, a relic. You dig a shallow hole and place it in gently, like a time capsule, or a corpse. Then you cover it with dirt and stones, and walk away. Some losses are easier than others. You don't miss traffic. You don't miss ads. You don't miss holding your breath every time you opened your bank app. You don't miss passwords or pop-ups or forced small talk in office break rooms. You miss hot water, sometimes. Real coffee. Movie theaters. You miss opening the fridge just to stare into it. Not because you were hungry, but because it was there. But mostly, you miss music. Real music. Someone in the group had an acoustic guitar once, but its strings snapped during a storm and never got replaced. Now people hum, or clap rhythms, or sing in half-remembered fragments. One night, someone recites lyrics from memory, a pop song from a decade ago. You all sit in silence, letting the words hang in the air. It's like casting a spell. And for a moment, you remember who you were when you first heard it, the room you were in, the season, the version of yourself that still believed everything could be Googled. You don't speak afterward. You just let the fire crackle. You start seeing signs of the old world in stranger places. A broken vending machine half buried in weeds. A billboard that once advertised car insurance, now faded to illegibility. A rusted swing set in a schoolyard that's become home to rabbits. You learn to read the ruins like a language. Cracked pavement means old roads. Roads mean gas stations, which sometimes still hold canned goods. Empty homes sometimes offer tools, or cloth, or stories written in the margins of calendars. One house had a note taped to the fridge, gone to Aunt Sherry's. Back in 3 days. There was no date. No one ever returned. You stood in that kitchen, imagining the person who wrote it. The rush. The hope. The sense that things were temporary. You leave the note where it is. Some messages shouldn't be erased. You hold a ceremony the next day, not because anyone told you to, not because of religion or tradition, because it feels right. You gather at the edge of the field, where the fire scorched a few trees. Someone ties ribbons around them, bright scraps of cloth. Someone else places stones in a spiral. You burn a bundle of herbs, wild mint, and crushed pine needles. The smoke smells clean, new. You stand in silence. No speeches, just breath. It's not a funeral. It's not a festival. It's memory, alive and present. Later, you carve something into the doorframe of the storage hut, a symbol you invented. A circle with 4 lines radiating outward like compass points. No one explains it. Everyone understands. It means this was the beginning, not the end of the old world, the start of the new one. You hold a ceremony the next day, not because anyone told you to, not because of religion or tradition, because it feels right. You gather at the edge of the field, where the fire scorched a few trees. Someone ties ribbons around them, bright scraps of cloth. Someone else places stones in a spiral. You burn a bundle of herbs, wild mint, and crushed pine needles. The smoke smells clean, new. You stand in silence. No speeches, just breath. It's not a funeral. It's not a festival. It's memory, alive and present. Later, you carve something into the doorframe of the storage hut, a symbol you invented. A circle with 4 lines radiating outward like compass points. No one explains it. Everyone understands. It means this was the beginning, not the end of the old world, the start of the new one. What it was like to be the elders of the new world. Years pass, that you don't count them the same way anymore. The children mark time by tree growth and fire festivals. The elders, your group now, track seasons and patterns. How early the first frost comes, how the rains shift from month to month. You have notebooks, yes, but they're not calendars in the old sense. They're chronicles. It's strange to be an elder. Not old, necessarily. Not by the standards of the past. But here, now, you are the one they come to for stories, for guidance, for the memory of how it all fell apart, and how you helped build what came after. You speak less often, and when you do, it carries weight. Not because you're trying to sound wise, but because you remember a world with noise, with so much speaking that no one listened, with so many answers, there were no questions. Here, silence means something. Here, you've learned to let a moment breathe. Your body is different now, not in the way it used to age, knees from a desk job, or weight from stress eating. This aging is earned. Your hands are calloused from rope and rough bark. Your back tells stories in stiffness and muscle. You still wake early, without alarms. You sleep deeply. You eat gratefully. You've learned the names of birds by their calls. You've learned what trees groan before they fall. You've learned which plants burn your skin and which ones heal it. You become the kind of person your past self might not have recognized. And yet, when you look in the mirror, when you find one, dusty and cracked, you still see the same eyes, just quieter. There are children now who have never seen a city. They've never heard a ringtone, never ridden in a car, never stared at a screen for hours. To them, the old world is a myth, a place of impossible machines and endless food and mysterious sickness. They don't miss what they never had, but they do ask, did people really fly in the sky? Did everyone have their own house? Were there really places where food came on conveyor belts? You answer carefully. You try to explain that it wasn't magic, that it came at a cost, that even when it worked, it didn't work for everyone. You tell them about noise and speed and loneliness, about how you used to live stacked in boxes, staring at rectangles, forgetting how to touch the earth. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they look worried. Sometimes they ask, why did it end? You don't say war or collapse or the grid falling apart. You say, because we forgot how to live without it. Then you show them how to build a fire. The younger ones invent their own words. They rename trees. They give new names to old tools. They dance around the fire in ways you never taught them. They sing songs made up on the spot. Their games involve sticks, water, and imagination. It is not regression. It is invention. They are not rebuilding the past. They are creating something you never could have predicted. A culture rooted in memory, but not shackled by it. And when they ask what the old symbols meant, the logos, the flags, the emojis, you explain as best you can. But you also say, you don't have to bring them back. Some things are meant to be buried. You become the keeper of stories. You write them down in longhand. Not just facts, but feelings. What it was like that first winter. How cold the nights were before fire. What it felt like to watch the first tomato ripen. How people argued and forgave and shared. You document how things changed. How cooking became ritual. How the group became a circle. How you learned to treat a wound with plant and leaf, and clean fish with obsidian, and light a fire with flint and rhythm. Not because these things are sacred, but because they are remembered. Because someone, someday, might wonder what it was really like when the world was young again. You watch the circle grow. New faces come with each season. Some from over the ridge. Some born here. Others just arrive. Not everyone stays. Some keep moving. Some build their own settlements nearby. But you trade, visit, celebrate together. There is a kind of federation forming. Not official, not ruled, but shared. You send seeds, receive tools, exchange songs. You write messages on birch bark and pass them along through traveling bands. Some reach places hundreds of miles away. You hear about a coastal village that's built a windmill, about a canyon outpost with solar panels that still work, about a forest town where people have trained hawks. You're not alone anymore. The world is knitting itself together, thread by slow thread. One night, around the fire, someone asks, "What would happen if the old world came back?" Everyone grows quiet. You think of machines humming again, of cities flickering to life, of roads, loud and crowded, of governments reforming, of satellites blinking back online. You think of choices, of control being centralized again, of voices being drowned out by noise. You say, if it comes back, it'll be up to us to remember what it cost. Someone nods. Another tosses a pine cone into the flames. You sit in the warmth, surrounded by people who grow their own food, raise their children in the open, and build shelters with their hands. It's not utopia, but it's real. And that, you think, is enough. The stars above have become familiar friends. You know their movements. You watch their slow arcs through seasons. You wonder what satellites still drift up there, what signals they're still trying to send. But the sky does not speak. It only glows. And that glow, you've learned, is enough light to walk by. The circle holds a celebration every year now. It marks no specific event, just the turning. The fact that you're still here. There is music, food, storytelling. The children decorate the trees with shells and cloth. The elders tell tales. The fire is lit high and slow. This year, they ask you to speak. You stand before the group, your back warmed by flame, and say only this: "We began again." Then you sit, because nothing more needs to be said, because they all understand, because you lived it.
The lamps are being lit. In a villa just beyond the center of Ravenna, the sun has dipped below the tiled rooftops, casting long, uncertain shadows across the worn mosaic floors. The year is somewhere near the end, 476 C. The air smells faintly of olive oil, damp stone, and distant smoke. The world is quiet, but underneath that quiet runs a tension. Not loud, not shouted, but present. Constant. In the triclinium, the dining couches are laid with simple linens. Once, this room would have echoed with the voices of guests in embroidered togas. Now it is still. The mistress of the house, Domitia, walks slowly from corner to corner, placing small terracotta lamps on wall niches, each filled with oil and fitted with a floating wick. Her hands are steady. This is her rhythm. She's done this every evening for decades. The flame catches with a soft sigh. One lamp. Then another. Beyond the atrium, a young servant girl named Livia moves through the peristyle courtyard with a basket of lamp wicks. She checks the oil levels. She replaces a broken wick. She listens to the water dripping in the impluvium, slower now, as the aqueducts fall into disrepair. Sometimes it doesn't run at all. Tonight it drips. That's a good sign. Ravenna is still technically the capital of the Western Roman Empire. But empire is a brittle thing now. The emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is a boy. A puppet, really. Few speak of him. Fewer expect him to last the year. The real power is in the east, in Constantinople. Or in the camps of men like Odoacer, waiting just beyond the city walls. But inside this villa, Domitia smooths her robes and moves through each room as she always has. In the tablinum, once her husband's study, she pauses. His scrolls still line the shelves, gathering dust. He was a notarius, a bureaucrat in the old style. Dead these 10 years. The room smells of old paper, ink, and a hint of fading lavender from a long empty bowl. She does not linger. The dead do not need light. Livia finishes the final lamp in the lararium, the small shrine to the household gods. The flame flickers beside the worn figures of Laras and Penates. She whispers a half-prayer she learned from her grandmother. Then moves on. Outside, the streets of Ravenna darken. The city is smaller than it once was, its stones older, its corners more hollow. But it breathes. Slowly. Reluctantly. Like a body forgetting how to move. And in one of its homes, a woman lights her lamps as she always has, fighting the dusk not with swords or speeches, but with oil and quiet, persistent flame. The morning is cold. Not bitter, but insistent. A kind of chill that finds its way into stone floors and clay walls, that settles into your sleeves and lingers even after the fire is lit. Livia wakes before the rest of the house. She always does. Her mat is tucked behind the kitchen, between the hearth and a storage room lined with sacks of flour and amphorae of olive oil. The light is barely there, a faint grayness through the slit of a window above. She sits up slowly. Her hands ache a little. They always have, even when she was younger. Maybe from scrubbing too many basins, maybe from grinding grain when the old millstone jammed. She folds her blanket, dusts the floor with a soft brush of her palm, and begins her day. The kitchen is still. The fire has died overnight, so she kneels beside it and begins to coax it back to life. First, the coals, blackened and faintly warm. Then kindling. A whisper of smoke curls upward, catching on her sleeve. She blows gently. The fire hesitates, then catches. Bread must be prepared. She measures flour into a large shallow bowl, adds a pinch of salt, and mixes it with water drawn from the courtyard cistern. The water is slightly brackish, but good enough. The city's aqueducts falter more often now. Maintenance crews no longer come when summoned. That was once the city's pride: clean water, public fountains, bathing houses that steamed in the afternoon sun. Now many of those lie dry. Livia kneads the dough slowly. Her hands follow a rhythm passed down through generations: press, fold, turn. It is quiet work. Comforting, even. The dough is left to rise beside the fire, beneath a clean cloth weighted at the corners. As she waits, she begins to sweep the kitchen floor. Dust, a beetle, a few dropped lentils. Her movements are slow but precise. The broom is just a bundle of reeds tied with string, but it does the job. From the window, she hears a rooster crow, muffled by walls and distance. Somewhere, someone else is waking up to another day in a fading empire. Once the bread has risen, she shapes it into flat rounds and slides them into the clay oven, feeding it with small twigs and olive husks. The smell begins to fill the room, warm, simple, grounding. It is not a feast. But it is food. And it will be enough. Later, she moves on to the laundry. She heats water over the fire, stirring ashes into the pot. It makes lye of a sort. Good for washing but rough on the skin. She scrubs garments against a board, her knuckles red from the work. The water sloshes and steams. Linen tunics, woolen cloaks, a pair of sandals caked with dried mud from the street. She does not question whose clothes these are. She knows them by weight and wear alone. There is no idle moment. As the clothes dry, she grinds dried herbs for the mistress's evening tea. Then she polishes the family silver spoons, dull though they may be. She sweeps the atrium. She fetches water. She feeds the old dog who lies near the doorway, too tired to chase birds anymore. There is a rhythm to it all. Repetitive. Predictable. Livia does not complain, nor does she romanticize the labor. It is simply what must be done. The days blur into one another, marked not by politics or philosophy, but by bread rising, water boiling, dust gathering again by dusk. Sometimes, while scrubbing the flagstones near the front door, she hears voices drifting from the street. Not Latin. Not quite. Germanic tongues, Gothic accents, words twisted at the edges. The city is full of outsiders now, mercenaries, traders, travelers seeking safety in the former heart of the empire. She does not look up. She has heard them before. Some are kind. Some are cruel. But all are uncertain. In the afternoons, when her work is briefly paused, she sits in the shade of the courtyard fig tree. If the sun is kind, she lets it warm her face. And sometimes, in those moments, she remembers her mother. She remembers her mother's hands, doing the same work. The same motions. The same quiet resignation. In the shadows of decline, the servant's routine continues, undisturbed by emperors or invasions. A rhythm older than the empire itself. The candle is nearly gone. Its base has melted into the iron holder, wax puddling like pale amber across the bishop's desk. The light flickers against the walls of the study, casting elongated shadows that shift with each breeze that sneaks through the cracks in the wooden shutters. Outside, the city sleeps. Or pretends to. The bishop sits at a modest desk, hunched slightly, a woolen cloak wrapped around his shoulders. His name is Bishop Faustus. He is not young. His beard is thin and gray, and his fingers tremble slightly, not with fear, but from years of scribal labor. He was once a scholar in Milan. Now, in Ravenna, he tends to the souls of a shrinking flock. Before him lies a single sheet of parchment, smoothed carefully and pinned at the corners with small stones. He dips his stylus into the ink, dark and slow-moving, and begins to write. The Latin is elegant but compact, trained, refined, efficient. This is not a sermon. This is a letter. A final one, perhaps. The letter is addressed to a fellow bishop in Hippo Regius, in Africa, though he does not know if it will ever arrive. The seas are no longer reliable. Pirates, warbands, failing ports. The rhythms of trade and communication have become frayed, threadbare. Still, he writes. He writes of the city. Of the people he has buried. Of the children baptized under broken arches. Of the shrinking number of candles at Mass, and the way the roof leaks in the southern aisle of the basilica. He writes of fear, yes, but also of perseverance. Of faith. Of the strange clarity that comes in times of collapse. He does not mention the empire by name, not directly. The Western Empire is dying, everyone knows this. But to write it down feels final. Instead, he writes of Rome as an idea. Rome as inheritance. Rome as burden and blessing, cradled in the arms of God and man. Outside, wind stirs the olive branches. The candle gutters low. He pauses in his writing. Across the room, a mosaic of St. Paul stares down from the curved wall, his hand outstretched in blessing. Dust gathers in the crevices between the tesserae. The bishop studies it, letting his mind drift. He remembers when the basilica was consecrated, decades ago, in a time that already feels like legend. The crowds, the scent of incense, the way the floor gleamed beneath hundreds of feet. He wonders if it will stand another generation. Then he writes again. He writes of memory, not his own, but Rome's. How memory is all that survives when law and stone fall away. He recalls a line from Augustine, whose teachings still echo across the western provinces. The earthly city shall pass away, but the city of God remains. He dips the stylus again. The ink is thicker now, nearly congealed. The letter nears its end. He signs it simply, Faustus, servant of the faithful, in the time of great silence. The bishop seals the letter with wax pressed from the dying candle. He holds it in his hands for a moment, then sets it aside, as if unsure what to do next. A moment of stillness follows. Then, as he does each night, he stands slowly and moves toward the chapel. It is a simple room, bare stone, wooden benches, a single cross above the altar. A few votive lamps flicker along the wall. He lights the final one, whispering a prayer in Latin too old for most of his parishioners to follow completely. He kneels on the cold floor. He does not pray for Rome. He prays for the people. For Livia, the servant girl he sees sometimes in the back row on feast days. For Domitia, the aging noblewoman who still brings olive oil to the poorhouse. For the children baptized last spring. For the Gothic mercenaries who sometimes linger outside the chapel door, unsure whether they are welcome. He prays for all of them, and then he rises, slowly, and returns to his room. The candle is gone. The night is darker than most. Clouds have rolled in from the Adriatic, thick and low. No stars are visible, and the moon hides behind layers of shadow. Ravenna lies hushed beneath this heavy sky, the streets muffled, the air dense with unspoken tension. Somewhere beyond the northern gates, there are movements, quiet, deliberate, and foreign. Boots in the mud. Armor brushed with pine needles. Murmured words in Gothic tongues. But inside the city, people sleep. Or try to. Domitia dreams. In her sleep, she is no longer old. Her villa is filled with light. The halls echo with laughter, and her husband reads aloud from a scroll by the fountain. Her sons run through the peristyle, chasing each other in tunics too long for their legs. She sees herself as a younger woman, dressed for Saturnalia, golden earrings swaying gently. Rome is still alive in this dream. Whole. Radiant. Intact. She does not hear the first gates give way. In another part of the city, Livia stirs. She is not dreaming. She is listening. There is something wrong with the silence. It is too still, like a breath held too long. Then, just barely, she hears it. A clatter. Metal against stone. A horse's uneasy stamp on cobbles slick with dew. She sits up slowly, careful not to wake the kitchen dog, who sleeps soundly, deaf to the world. The villa is silent. Lamps have burned low. Her first instinct is to move to the courtyard, to look out toward the street. But she stops. She remembers the stories of what happens when unfamiliar shadows pass by open gates. She remains where she is, crouched low beside the kitchen wall. She does not yet know that the city has been breached. She only knows that something is ending. At the basilica, the bishop is awake. He had not returned to sleep after his final prayer. Instead, he sits in the chapel, candlelight flickering across his face. When the first sounds of movement reach him, boots on the marble portico, voices in uncertain Latin, he does not react with fear. He rises. Slowly. Deliberately. At the door of the chapel stands a tall man in a fur-lined cloak. A sword is sheathed at his hip, and his brow is heavy. He is a chieftain of sorts, though the bishop does not know his name. Their eyes meet. Neither speaks. Then the man gestures gently toward the cross. The bishop nods once, steps aside, and the Gothic warrior enters. He does not draw his blade. He does not burn the altar. He stands in silence for a moment, then leaves. Outside, more figures pass in quiet procession. Not a sack. Not yet. Just a presence. By dawn, Ravenna has not fallen apart, but it has changed. In the courtyards, in the streets, on the steps of old temples and homes, foreign men now sit and speak in voices that echo strangely through the city's colonnades. Some carry weapons. Others carry bread. A few lean against broken columns, staring at the mosaics with unreadable expressions. The city is not burning. Not yet. But the empire is no longer here. It has receded, like a tide, leaving behind stones and memories. Domitian awakes to a strange quiet. Livia opens the shutters and sees new flags hanging near the gate towers. The bishop, standing outside his chapel, watches as Roman boys run side by side with Gothic ones, curious and unafraid, for now. No trumpet has sounded. No final decree has been issued. But everyone knows, the Western Roman Empire has ended. Not with a battle. Not with a fire. But with a change in who walks the streets at dawn. So now, as the city of Ravenna slips fully into morning, and the shadows of the night dissolve into pale, uncertain light, we leave behind the quiet rituals of those who lived the final hours of Rome, not the empire of conquest and marble triumphs, but the quieter Rome, the human one. The one of bread rising near a hearth. Of parchment letters written with trembling hands. Of fig trees in walled gardens, and prayers whispered beneath stone arches. The Rome held not in banners or borders, but in daily routines, in hope and habit. We often imagine the fall of a civilization as a moment, loud, final, crashing. But more often, it is a gentle unraveling. A tapering thread, a soft shifting of footsteps, a silence where there was once command. And for most, it isn't history. It's simply life continuing, with new faces and unfamiliar rules. The people of Ravenna did not wake to find Rome gone. They woke to the sounds of a different language outside their doors. To neighbors who no longer bowed in the old ways. To memories that no longer held power over the present. And still they rose. They baked bread. They wrote. They prayed. Now, as you settle into stillness, let yourself drift with the memory of that fading world. A city not yet ruined, but changed. A candle guttering in a stone chapel. A servant girl curled beneath a wool blanket. A bishop folding his hands in prayer, as the empire behind him fades into twilight. What was once Rome now sleeps. And so may you. Good night.